And so, and then since Sarah is the secretary, I will go ahead and take the role for this. Trustee Fairfax.
Here.
Trustee Foss.
Here.
Trustee Chakraborty.
Here.
Trustee Burns.
Here.
Trustee Bloom.
Here.
Trustee Fruth is here. Trustee Lavin is absent and expected a little later in the meeting. In pursuant to state law and emergency proclamations, we are authorized to conduct virtual meetings. Is there a motion to conduct a virtual meeting?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. I missed who the second was. I got us first by Ted.
It was me. It was Virginia.
Okay. That has been moved and seconded. Hearing no further discussion, I'll take the roll. Trustee Fairfax.
Here.
Yes or no, please? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay. Trustee Foss.
Yes.
Trustee Burns.
Yes.
Trustee Chakraborty.
Yes.
Trustee Bloom.
Yes.
And Trustee Fruth is a yes. Okay. So we are now in the approved of our virtual meeting. And now on to our approval of our minutes from our January 25th meeting and our special meeting in earlier this month. Is there a motion to approve the two sets of minutes?
Move to approve both minutes.
Okay, I heard a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, any questions regarding those minutes? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Suzanne.
Now it's here, right? Here.
No, now it's a yes or no.
That's a yes. Okay, yes. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Yes, vote to approve. Ted.
Aye.
Colleen.
An aye for me.
Matarima.
Aye for me too.
Virginia.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. The minutes are approved. Then on to public comments. I don't believe David or I received any comments via our form or email. Were there any of the meeting guests tonight who would like to make a comment at this time? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to staff reports.
Trustee
I'm
comments.
sorry, trustee comments and board calendar. Yes, thank you, David. Anyone have any comments about items not specifically itemized on the agenda?
Is this where we all cry about David leaving? Like, I don't know. I
In
didn't
his
see that
last
in.
week?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't,
That's
I
what-
didn't see it on the
that's what-
agenda, so I was just wondering.
That was going to be part of closed session, so it would just be between us.
Oh, okay,
It
all
would
right.
be.
Thank you. As long as we get to it at some point.
All right.
Matt, are you still there?
Is he trying to switch over to his
David, he was
computer?
moving from his telephone to his
Ah,
to his
okay.
computer.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. I was switching over to my computer.
No worries.
So we have our board calendar for the year. And we have our Juneteenth closed day on there. Anything else anyone on the board would like to bring up at this time? Okay, then we will go on to staff reports as appropriate now.
Okay. As usual, you have my report, the strategic priorities report from staff members, and our core use statistics report. Other than what I have written in my narrative, I just wanted to mention to all of you, because I intended to mention this in the narrative written report itself, but neglected to do so. The members of the leadership team and I have prepared an internal transition document that outlines the ongoing and temporary responsibilities, at least in some cases temporary, of the various members of the leadership team, the other directors in the interim between the time that I depart and either the time that the board hires an interim director or there's a permanent executive director. And that document is full of a lot of information that I have passed on to the various directors to make sure that they have, that they're aware of it, that they have access to it, so that they can carry on and do some of the things that I would typically have primary responsibility to do, or at least know where that information can be found, either in other digital files or in other paper files that I've shared with all of them. And that transition document has also been shared with other staff members so that they're aware that the members of the leadership team are prepared to do what needs to be done. And again, until there is either an interim executive director or a permanent executive director. So I just wanted to mention that to reassure all of you that in the interim, these other directors are more than capable and prepared to do the things that need to be done, including helping you prepare for your board meetings each month. If you're curious about any of the contents of that transition document, be happy to share it with you. But again, it's mostly just an internal document so that everyone is aware of what each of the directors will be responsible for, so that everyone is confident that things won't be forgotten. So that was the only other thing I wanted to specifically mention that I didn't put into my narrative. Other than that, you have the documents in front of you, and if there are any comments or questions, I or other members of the leadership team who are with us will be happy to answer them. The only other thing I wanted to specifically mention was about the core use statistics report. And Mallory, as now an independent consultant, continues to work with us to develop this and present this report to you every month. And currently, when you look at the report, you will see that we are still comparing current statistics to 2019 or pre-pandemic statistics. And Mallory had a conversation with the leadership team recently about whether we still wanted to do that, or whether or not we still thought that making that comparison was useful. And I, at the time, said that until we talked with you, the board members, or you had a chance to talk about it and tell us whether you thought that information continued to be useful to you, that we should continue to include them and make that comparison. So right now, you still see both 2019 and 2021 information there. And also 2020, and you can tell us whether you still want to see that comparison to pre-pandemic numbers in this report every month, if that's still useful to you, if it would be useful to see it, but to see it less frequently, like perhaps a couple of times a year. And then the leadership team and Mallory can adjust and make plans to do that. So that was the only other thing I also wanted to mention. Again, otherwise, please discuss, ask questions, and we'll do our best to answer.
Well, David, of course, your note about the executive search is now outdated.
Of course,
Right.
of course. I put the board packet together, Ted, before we
Right.
had that information.
Right.
So, you have obviously a topic, discussion topic on your agenda for a little later this evening to talk about that.
Are we okay to spend like 2-3 minutes talking about whether or not we'd like to keep the core use statistics with a comparison to 19 and 20?
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, let's talk about that.
I know for some of these statistics, it may not be terribly relevant, but I do like to see it for things like our NPS score and website use. I think especially some of the digital items where we might think, as far as physical materials or building use, those are going to go down drastically, and maybe the comparison to 2019 isn't worth it. I think for a lot of our digital presence, having a comparison to pre-pandemic lets us know how those things are shifting and whether or not we need to reallocate some budget funds to that moving forward. If we start seeing that things are staying around the 2020 and 2021 lines, rather than receding back to some of the 2019 numbers.
I also, I think it's useful if it's not too, laborsome, time consuming, distracting, all of that. I find it still useful.
I don't think it's necessarily laborious or time consuming. I mean, the data is already there. I think there were, two issues that the leadership team talked about with Mallory. Number one, more importantly, was it still useful and valuable to you? And number two, that if we continue to do it, which we certainly can, at some point it just might make it a little more challenging in terms of presenting the data, putting it together in a way that is still visibly or visually, I should say, useful and helpful for you. So, but the data is there, so it can continue to still be presented if you want it.
I completely understand, as somebody who prepares materials, that having to add another year can add to the complexity of it. But I do think that there's times where it is really useful to watch what the trends are.
Sure.
And have a frame of reference.
So I think it sounds like the team should probably, for now at least, continue to plan to present them, and adjustments can always be made later.
Yeah, I think so. It seems it's so hard to know how things are going to continue to change as we move forward. And as what are people continue to do? But I see, I continue to see value in some of this right now. So
Great.
Especially as we head into this budget. Maybe after the budget, we'll later this year we'll revisit it and see how, if on a frequency level, if we want to continue. But right. I think as we do that, so.
I have one quick question about the Wi-Fi use.
Sure.
Because there was new Wi-Fi extended beyond the building, right? Or did that happen? Like, is this comparing, do we have more of a reach on Wi-Fi now than we used to?
No, I wouldn't say it's more. I mean, I would say that we have or are doing our best to improve access to Wi-Fi immediately outside our building, particularly the main library. As I think we had some plans, and we had started some conversations with the Park District about extending Wi-Fi throughout Scoville Park, as we had done a number of years ago. And we had some that would have included, I think, some grant money to help us do that. However, the Park District determined that that was not something that they wanted to commit time and resources to right now. And so we're not pursuing that. But again, we either have or are preparing to improve Wi-Fi access immediately out, to improve it, make it stronger immediately outside the building. So there is for a certain amount of space outside the building, you can still access our wireless network. Once you get a little further out into the park, at some point you're gonna lose that access.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about any of the three reports, including strategic priorities?
Okay. Going on to financial reports.
You have Jeremy Andrzejkowski's narrative report and all of the other financial reports that Linda's put together for us. Jeremy is on vacation this week, so he is not with us to answer any specific questions, but of course, if you have them, I will do my best to answer them for you.
And David, I believe that all of the board members received the letter from our accountants to look at the financial records from last year. And I believe we've all returned those.
I haven't heard from the audit. I mean, I assumed that you had all received them. I hope you have, because I know that they were sent. The auditors haven't directly communicated with me about whether they've received them all back. But on the other hand, if they do not receive them or have not received them, I know they'll be letting us know because they need to have them. So if you did not receive your letter from our auditor, our financial auditor, please let us know. If you have received it, please return it to them as soon as you can.
Thanks, David.
Sure.
It sounds like a community service announcement.
Okay. All right. So, any questions else about that? All right, then we will go into our the disbursements report. Is there a motion to approve the disbursements report?
So moved.
Ted moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Madhurima. Any further discussions or questions regarding the disbursements? Okay, hearing none. The vote to approve. Ted,
Yes.
Colleen,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Virginia,
Yes.
Madhurima,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Now we will go into additional reports. iGov.
The main thing that the most important thing there is the groundbreaking for the community center Saturday, March 19th, 1 p.m. We're all invited to that. Also, when we were going through ideas for, the iGov is doing a sustainability article in the Wednesday Journal monthly. And when we were going through ideas, one of the ideas that I brought up was about the bees on the library roof. And so I am going to reach out to Cassandra West and see if she might be interested in writing that. And there's another part of the government that has bees as well, and I'm trying to remember what it is right now.
I think it's on the Public Works building.
Oh, Colleen just copied stuff in. Awesome. So it's in the notes.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
that's in June, the bees on the roof. And some of the others that were suggested are sustainable garden practices. I also was talking about, because a lot of people don't understand that when they plant a plant in their garden, that if it's an invasive plant, that birds eat the seeds and fly and poop in the preserves. And that's how it gets, that they actually impact native lands. So somebody's taking that on. So there's some really good articles that are coming up. I wanted to check with you all if you like the idea of the covering the bees on the roof for the library. I wanted to bring it up somehow.
Suzanne, this is Ted. I have a lot of stake on those bees in the roof, and I have some background about it because we actually have installed a bee cam there.
Oh,
And so that people can actually see the bees up there. And I could tell you a lot about the bees, and I actually have some honey from the hives up there. So let's talk about that.
okay, then I'll find a way to, if I can, I haven't reached out to Cassandra yet. And if she's got the capacity right now, but that's who we talked about possibly writing it. And see, she might be able to interview you. And, if not, we'll find somebody else to write it, but that's.
But I know a lot about the bees there. And so
Okay.
I'd love to do that.
Are we
Second,
all good on that and bringing the library in terms of covering the bees on the roof?
Yeah, I'm fine.
and
Uh-huh.
Matt, it's not an additional report, but I have joined as a representative of the library to the sustainability, the village committee. I don't even know what it's called, but it's basically Gary Cunine. And we had our first meeting. We will meet the third Thursday of the month each morning. And it was really interesting to hear how many agencies and entities there were that are working with the sustainability project. And
This would have been good with trustee comments, but go ahead.
Okay, all right, but I just wanted to let you know that this is like, as to Suzanne's point, that I think that talking about sustainability and the article and iGov, it all fits together.
Okay. Anything else from iGov, Suzanne?
I think those are the high points. And thanks, Colleen, for putting the comments in. That's helpful.
COG has not met, and I know David is heartbroken that he will not have had that joy one last time before leaving. ILA legislation and advocacy. We were wrapping up about the legislative meetups. We discussed some of the early legislation that if there was anything on the forefront as things were beginning to get filed and firmed up, but I don't think that there was anything major that we were looking at. There was collecting stories regarding broadband access, but more so from the more outer suburban rural libraries than suburban, because it's more of a coverage issue in the rural areas. So and then there was another ebook pricing that as they put together some more stuff, they may be reaching out for we may be reaching out for data on ebook costs versus print book costs, which a lot of libraries have access to. So it may be something we may be called up to help provide some data for as that moves forward, if that gets some traction. And then of course the getting ready for presentations at various conferences. I think ALA just sent out their big registration for late June in Washington, DC either yesterday or today. I can't remember when I saw that email. So I know there was talk of putting together a presentation for the ALA and ILA. So keep an eye out. Friends of the library.
The Friends, I don't think Sarah's joined us yet. Is that correct? No. Okay.
No.
The Friends of the Library did not meet, I think, in February. However, Joe Larscheid, who has been serving as the president of the board of the Friends, sent a letter to the members of the Friends, and that included Sarah as their liaison, earlier this week, letting them know that he was resigning effective immediately from his post as the president. And I believe his spouse was serving as the board's administrative assistant, and she has resigned as well. So as far as I understand it right now, the Friends board is without a president and without any administrative assistants. I don't know how many additional board members that leaves. I haven't counted them recently, but I am getting concerned that soon, if this kind of trend continues, and if the Friends are without any opportunity to conduct a book fair, which is really their one and only fundraising activity, and unless there is some developments in other areas of potential fundraising, that soon there may not be enough officers to make any important decisions for that organization. So I would just encourage the board through Sarah to continue to have conversations with the Friends board and to sort of continue to monitor what's happening. What they don't want to be in the position of, and what I don't think the library does, is not having enough officers to make the kinds of decisions about access to the Friends finances and assets. I mean, in other words, if the board dissolves by default, it may make doing those kinds of things difficult, and of course would, I think, involve having to have attorneys sort it all out. So I just mentioned that just to keep it on your radar. Meanwhile, Sarah, of course, continues to be your liaison to the Friends. Lori Pulliam and Jody Colo have determined that they're going to start attending Friends boards meeting on a regular basis in the absence of an executive director to do that. And so you'll have enough eyes from the library on what's happening there, so you'll be able to stay informed. But I just wanted to, in case you didn't all know, I wanted to mention that Joe did resign his post.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay. And then we have our library employment report.
And that report Billy Treese puts together for you now each month. Are there any questions about that?
I mean, it's not a super important question, but I'm guessing we're seeing the shift in some of our part-time workers moving more towards technology because of that same shift we saw in the youth statistics.
Correct. If you're asking, do we need to have greater staff power in that service area? We do, but I think we've also, when we have what might have been previously part-time employment in various areas, we always look to see if there are opportunities to increase hours to increase hours for positions or to make them full-time. So there is that going on as well.
Okay. Is that something that we could have put on this report, is when part-time employees get moved to full-time? I think that would help us have a better picture of who we're losing and how things are actually shifting with. Because
Billy,
I mean, I look at this and I'm like, okay, 3 people left and 1 person came on board, but it sounds like that's not actually the one-to-one trade that we're looking at. If other people were moved to full-time rather than part-time, that might change
Right.
the picture that we're looking at.
yeah, I mean, right. Sometimes that may be the case and sometimes not. Billy, what would you say about that?
I just wanted to point out that Virginia picked up on, yeah, this report shows you the ins and outs, but it doesn't tell you all the things that really happened. Yeah, anytime someone leaves, there's a cascade of changes that might occur, with internal promotions and things like that. This report's not going to show that. This report's ran by just like 2 clicks in our new system, Bamboo HR. I'd like to continue to do this report because it's simple and easy to produce and it shows you the ins and outs. But if you're talking about you'd like to see when staff are promoted or when there's status changes, I could also show that information.
I think that would be helpful, especially, some of the larger conversations we've been having, especially around budget time, around, moving dollars to, get people to be more full-time and providing the healthcare and things like that. I think it would be an easier picture for us to see when we do know about some of those internal promotions as well. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. So it would be I think an additional page that I would just call staff changes. Yeah, I'll think through it, but basically showing you a little bit more about internal mobility and things that are moving around.
Excellent, thank you. Good idea. Right, then on to new business, our proposed revision to our leaves of absence policy.
So you have the proposed revisions in your board packet. This is a very long policy statement. Billy worked on it for quite some time with assistance from HR source and our attorney to make sure that it included legally everything that it needed to, as well as all of the things that we wanted it to include. Just like the policy policy revisions that you approved last month regarding employee health, this one has not been revised in quite some time, and so it required a lot of time and attention. And Billy is here, of course, to give a little bit of more introduction to that and to answer questions about it that you might have.
So David, you kind of took exactly what I was going to say to introduce the policy.
Okay,
So,
awesome.
yeah, I wanted every board member to know that, that this has been reviewed by an attorney and we worked with HR source to update this to where it needed to be. And really, I think it'll be a helpful document for our staff to know what types of leaves of absence are available to them. And it's a 9-page policy because it includes a lot of, it includes like 9 or 10 different types of leaves of absences. And, but I want to draw your attention to four key changes in this policy. If we're going to focus on 4 things, the 4 things that I would focus on is firstly and one of the main reasons for the update to this policy was to expand bereavement compassionate leave, to expand access or eligibility to all of our staff. The current policy, as it has been since 2011, it allowed for only full-time staff to take time off to grieve. This would allow all full-time and part-time staff members that opportunity. So I'm very proud to add that in. And actually, if there were no other changes to the policy, that's the one that's worth it to me, because that's the one I've been hearing about from our part-time staff, for the last 4.5 years I've been here. So I'm glad to finally have an opportunity to put this in front of you. So that's the first one. The second one is also to put into a board-approved policy the paid parental leave. So paid parental leave. We've been using it for the past, let's say, 3 years or so, 3.5 years. But we've been using it as guidelines that we've been able to work with and use for our staff. But it's not been part of library policy, and I'd like for that to be included now. So that's the paid parental leave being included in our policy, which allows allows our staff to take time off when they have a new addition to their household, whether that be through birth or through adoption or through court-appointed care. So I'm excited to get that included as well. And then the third change, or the third revision, actually the third and fourth one are ones that we should have had all along and are part of Illinois statute, but I'm glad that we're actually going to be able to name them and have them included in this policy. That's school visitation leave. So making sure staff know that they can take time off to attend different school-related activities and items that are going on with their kids who are school age. So school visitation leave is in there. And then also the fourth change I'm glad we're naming now is our voting leave. So it's the last page, David. Voting leave. So we now specifically call out and prioritize and allow staff to take paid leave to vote. So those are all the major changes. Of course, there's a lot of language that has been updated with through the work of our attorneys, but those are the four main changes. Matt, your question about voting leave?
It was sarcasm.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
As the assistant deputy clerk of elections, I am all for people making sure that they have time to exercise their right to vote.
So Matt, I'll acknowledge I was in a very serious mindset, and I didn't the sarcasm totally lost on me. But also the last person I expected to question it was you, and I was like, what's he doing? Anyway, sorry.
That's quite all right.
Billy, I just have a question to a professional. Under the parental leave, you mentioned the phrase newly placed child. Is that the same or different from a foster child?
Similar. It's like if it's a court-appointed or a foster, there's lots of different, I don't want to get into very specific situations, but basically saying that if you have a child that's placed with you and there's paperwork that backs it up.
So newly placed was a very elegant way of putting it.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the leaves of absence policy as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madhurima in her frustration of not being one of the two. I will call the roll. Virginia.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Colleen.
Yes.
Madhurima.
Yes.
Ted.
Yes.
And I am a yes. The policy is approved. Thank you all. We'll now move on to our executive director search process. As was communicated via email by David to library staff and by me to the rest of the board, following our initial decision to hire John Keister and some initial conversations with staff and a member of the board. It was John Keister felt it was best to resign the contract and return the initial check. That will be coming back to us, and we are now back to considering how to proceed with our search for our next executive director. So we still have the proposals from before. I know we were not over the moon with them. By and large, I think they all had varying degrees of concern from every one of us for some reason or another. So I think there is a consideration as whether or not it is worth going back for an RFP, or if we, for another posting, or do we re-examine some of those proposals the other 6 that had come in, and we invite 1 or 2 of them in, a couple of them in to interview with the board in some sort of interview structure as part of that process, or do we look elsewhere as some other way? For this kind of thing, I don't know how, I don't know what, I've never been in this position before, so I don't know how much. I think I feel like we're all in a very similar boat in terms of experience regarding this. So feedback and conversation is encouraged.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I know that somebody spoke to a representative from the 6 other companies or groups when we, I guess, advised them that they had not been selected. Did any of them sound like they would just not be interested moving forward, or said, oh geez, thank goodness, because we didn't really want it, but we had already given you our paperwork and we've all been panicking? Like, are there any that we can take off the table based off of the conversations that were had after? No? Okay.
I don't think so. I think, I was going to mention as we went forward that Jackie from HR Source had commented that she had been watching the meeting, our special meeting, and was aware of our decision when I emailed out to everyone that we had gone with someone else. I did not specify in those emails who we had gone with, but she had commented that she had watched the meeting and was aware of our decision. And then she mentioned that that they were working with us in other capacities and would be happy to, continue to work with us going forward. But everybody else was kind of, thank you for letting us know.
Do we know where else they're working with us? I think Billy just mentioned that they had helped with crafting some of the policy that we have. Is there anywhere else that we know of that they work with us?
Well, we're members of HR Source, and Billy uses the expertise of their HR professionals and attorneys all the time with questions regarding both policy development and when he has questions that involve the employment of specific employees of the library. So yes, we use the expertise of HR Source regularly, and we pay them as a member to access those services.
Are there any other groups on this list that we have that kind of relationship with, just out of curiosity?
No.
Matt, I'd like to, thinking about opening this up for an RFP all over again. I noticed that even among the 7 that we had, the 7 proposals, only a few of them were library specific. And so I would like to ask David, how many consultants are there for this who work specifically with libraries in the Midwest? Have we already heard from all of them?
Yes, I think there may be a few others in the country that have a specialization in library work, but the ones that do most of the work you've heard from, and they include John Keister and Associates and Bradbury Miller Associates. A much smaller one that you've also heard from is Diter's Todd Consulting. They all work primarily or exclusively in the library arena. Again, there was one other that I had sent an RFP to specifically because I knew that this consultant also had primary interest in the library profession, and that was the consultant named June Garcia. She did not, for whatever reason, choose to submit a proposal. So, you know, any others that may operate primarily or exclusively in the library arena, I'm not that familiar with, but these three that I just mentioned that you have proposals from, they are all primarily concerned with libraries.
So I would recommend that if, as we go forward, we have 6 proposals. And as was mentioned, when those 6 people who didn't get the contract, only one of those really responded, having attended the meeting, et cetera. But we've got the 6 proposals, so I suppose we should look among those 6 and go to our alternative.
Ted, I have some thoughts about that. I'm not sure that it's essential that it be somebody who works primarily with libraries. And if we're trying to break the mold here and not reinforce status quo, not keep going in the same rut that has been creating a incredibly white industry, I think there is a real value in working with people who do not exclude the work that they do in that arena. And I think that there are, I think the people that are working in libraries are readily accessible to anybody who's doing searches. I don't think we're going to miss those if we use someone who has other skill sets, but I think we really, with what Oak Park Library is in an amazing place right now in terms of who our board is, the work that's been done on anti-racism, equity, the equity audits, the new policies that are being crafted. We are like doing amazing work, and we want to make sure that that is still sustained. And I think search firms that have the skill set and the understanding of equity work in that deep, nuanced way are more important than somebody who's just been doing libraries and maybe a little bit too locked into the mechanism that has created a non-diverse industry.
Thank you,
And
Suzanne.
not even necessarily, honestly, that who we hire, you know, what kind of representation, but also just their understanding of that work, and their ability to represent us in a way that we're comfortable with and proud of to potential candidates. If we have firms that have not done that work to the level that the library has, we're going to miss people because they're not going to find them because they don't understand what we're looking for, and or they're going to scare them off. So
I think another thing I'm just sort of realizing, which is why I asked David so many questions about HR Source, is we had kind of thrown HR Source into a pile of non-library groups. But here they apparently work with us fairly regularly on other things within the library. So we may not have a clear picture of, maybe they don't specialize in finding executives for libraries, but maybe they are doing other work within the library system that we can draw on. I think we might have to look more widely at some of those things.
I have a question I don't have an answer to, which is, if we put it back out to RFP, do we feel confident that we would have additional respondents that are not represented here?
No.
I spoke with a couple people that I know who do searches, and one of them, sadly, would be the search firm would be perfect, but they're not at capacity. I mean, they don't have the capacity in terms of the timing, but they did pass along 6 other search firm names. So it might be something where we as a board have to be more proactively engaged in seeking out and kind of expanding our circles and reaching out to find people. And some of the concerns that we had with the other two of the three that we were looking at the end were around the emotional intelligence testing. So I asked some questions about these things because I just wanted to get myself up to speed, because I felt like last time I was stepping back a little bit thinking, oh, you all know a little more what you're talking about. So I was getting myself up to speed. And both the people who do this kind of work were saying that those tests that were being used, that was Bradbury Miller, that those tests for emotional intelligence aren't necessarily what we would be wanting to use for this level, for an executive and for somebody who's like working with a team of leaders, that those tests are more designed for something like a sales force that's going to be hiring a bunch of sales forces, kind of decade or two or more ago. And that there are much better ways to find out about emotional intelligence in terms of building relationships and rapport and the types of questions that they would help us form. The other concern we had was around HR source was the, sorry, drawing a blank for a second.
That was the blind resumes, right?
Yes, the anonymous or blind resumes. And I wanted to kind of get their read on that. And again, that's kind of a outmoded approach to DEI that is not at all current. And I looked back, and one of my concerns was that it was actually a recommended approach here. Based on the Oak Park Library's equity and anti-racism journey, we would recommend the following additional tasks: anonymous resume screening. So I know that Virginia brought up the idea that, sometimes in tech it's used, and there can be situations where it might be useful. Like in tech, if you've got your selection committee are all of one particular demographic and have not really done deep work around equity issues, a blind search can help, because it then they're the issue, that the decision making. We're not the issue in this. We're not the concern. The concern, like, we all have done a lot of work. The library has done a lot of work. So the issues are like the gatekeepers and the flow, and who's in the industry, and kind of the fact that the process may not be as welcoming to some people as other people. So it seems more like the concern is about making the materials that go out, and the process needs to be something that works more than doing a blind search. I don't know that helps us here. And it is a little bit concerning that while looking at our materials, that's what they came up with. And also, one of them said that when they have done a blind, or anonymous search, because that's been really requested, that in the days of, now we're in Google time, and there really is no anonymous anymore. And that what they would spend a ton of time and a ton of effort redacting names and getting things prepared in that way. And then people would spend their time, it became like a game. People would spend their time Googling and trying to figure out who the people were. I know, horrifying, huh?
Who has that kind of time?
I know, it's kind of upsetting.
Library people.
More people than you think.
Right. But anyway, it was that, I just wanted to check my understanding of both of these things that were kind of red flags to me, to see if they really were, and what, professionals in the industry had to say about it. And these are both people that I know who also have a really strong DEI background. And they were not, they would actually actively discourage it. And, you know, like I have written down, not a favor of blind resumes. Yeah, the world is small. And yeah, that it's better to kind of make sure that the decision-making body is well enough versed to understand what the issues are, you know, than to try and manage it in that way. So, yeah.
So, I mean, of course, I'm with you, Suzanne, on I mean, it's nobody's surprised. I'm with you on the whole blind resume thing. Of course, that was my hang up. I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the votes, you know, from our minutes, actually, you know, the votes that we took. And I remember that once you, Suzanne, somebody else, I think it was Matt who pointed out that that Bradbury Miller was the company that did, I mean, the organization that did the personality tests. I remember saying that, oh, then I am definitely changing my vote to Carrington and Carrington, which then becomes, I mean, if we want to go with where we voted last time, I'm just pulling that up, and it seems like that would be next on the list. So are we okay with that? Like, are we okay moving down the list like that? Or I don't know.
Do we want
Colleen's
to put
shaking her
another
head?
put another 3 in the Zoom and see where they shake out? And
Well, I mean,
is that what you're saying?
yeah, though I guess the problem is that it was fresh, you know, or like we looked at these applications or we looked at these materials, you know, which I don't know.
Madhurima, I looked at all of them again this morning. And I have, of the 6 remaining, I do have one that went forward for me. And that was before our meeting tonight, and that is HR Source.
HR Source is the one with the blind resumes, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we can vote and we'll go wherever the vote goes.
I
but
think
just want to clarify.
personally, I think that whatever we do, I think, you know, if we want, I'd be inclined to have them, you know, if that's who we want, you know, considering, invite them to an interview with the board, have a special meeting and have 1 or 2, you know, if we want to stick to just this list of 6, invite them over and have questions for them. And
I'd
but
say
if
not, you're not suggesting all 6, are you, Matt?
no,
Like 2?
like 2.
Okay, then I'm with you. I'm with you.
You know, but you know, and I also want to say is like, you know, you know, Suzanne sent over an email to me of like the list of those other folks who, you know, wanted, you know, that might be of interest that weren't specific to library space, you know, working in library space. Do we want to, you know, give, you know, send over our initial RFP over to them once we like have a meeting and say, would you be at all interested? And, you know, maybe not doing like a response to the RFP, but attending this meeting and presenting to the board at this special meeting. At this time, we're also having these other 2, you know, interviews so that we can see what someone not in the library space would bring to the table.
Matt,
Yeah.
do you want additional presentations, or do you just want an opportunity for you, the trustees, to ask them questions? To me, it's really a matter of asking the kinds of questions that you have to get at the things that you really want to know. Because I think, and this is just my opinion, a presentation is just going to be sort of an in-person extension of the proposals that they submitted. Whereas if you ask some pointed questions to get at things you really want to know, you're going to learn a lot more quickly about who you want to work with and who you don't.
Okay.
David, that was actually going to be my argument against us having new contenders and old contenders in the same meeting. Is we've already seen the boilerplate or the polished presentation from these 6 remaining. If we bring in somebody new, we're at the risk of kind of what we did before, which somebody wins by default because they didn't take the hard steps, or we don't have enough time to dive into that one person or that one group.
Right.
And ask those questions, because there wasn't information ahead of time for us to look at,
Right.
which could advantage or disadvantage depending on how you look at it. But either way, I don't think it provides a level playing field for the
Yeah,
contenders.
I think that's true. And the other reason I just said what I did is that John Keister and Associates decided to resign after a couple of meetings in which he was asked some very pointed and specific questions. And you learned some things, or some people who were in those conversations learned some things that they didn't realize or didn't know before they asked the questions. And as a result of the outcome of those conversations is that the consultant decided to resign. So that's why I say you're going to, if you ask the same kinds of very specific, very direct questions to get at the things you really want to know, you're going to learn a lot more than just by listening to a presentation.
I 100% agree. And I don't think, I think some questions to get a sense particularly of their understanding of what the library is about and what we're about at this point, and making sure that they're fluent and understanding and capable. Last time I was underwhelmed, frankly. I was disappointed with what we had in in the materials that were sent, because the ones that seemed, where we landed, we had either had red flags, or like Virginia just said, went with one because it was shallow enough to not reveal the red flags. And I think we deserve better. I think the library and the community deserves better in this process. This is an inflection point in history. It really is. If we, and in this community, and we are in the right place on that. As the library, I'm so proud of our library and the work that David has done while here and the rest of the team has done. And all the equity audits and the policy change, everything is, we are poised so well to meet what is already showing up in places. There's a lot of book bannings. There's a lot of resistance about books all across the country. I think this is kind of critical. One of the things that we left open last time, and David kind of brought up that he did that they've got an internal kind of leadership plan short term, is the idea of whether we have an interim ED. And what that would give us is time to have this process unfold in a way that fits our values.
Well, actually, that was going to be my question, was about, because David has made the point very convincingly that, that it really would be unfair to, I don't know, I guess to like wring out as much extra work as we can from the leadership team who are stepping up, like they're stepping up to do all this extra work. And then if we elongate the process where they have to do that, that's just grossly unfair, and so I'm trying to keep that piece in mind too, like how much goodwill can we possibly exploit? Like that just does not seem right. So yeah, David.
So no, don't be sorry. Regarding that point, I can make a recommendation to you based on what's happened over the last week, and considering the fact that I think you're going to be involved in a rather prolonged search now for your next executive director. So I've had additional conversations with members of the leadership team, and there is one member of the leadership team who is not only capable of acting as an interim director for whatever amount of time you need before you hire a permanent executive director, and who is willing to step in and do that role, provided I think you're open to the opportunity and can understand that I think you'll need to sort of renegotiate the job and a salary for a temporary period of time. And that's our Director of Public Programs and Services, Lori Pulliam. She has worked for the organization for a long time. She's been a member of the leadership team for years. She's responsible for a great deal of what occurs within the organization from the point of view of public programs and services and the staff members who provide them, specifically within the adult and children's services areas. And she has a lot of institutional knowledge, and she's able to do the work. She's willing to do it. And you can, I think, if you wanted to, if you're interested in this opportunity, you can, I think, probably pretty quickly negotiate with her to determine, again, a range of tasks and responsibilities and a salary to do the job for a time. And then you don't have to be concerned about having to try to figure that out with a consultant or what you're going to do, because again, she's already with you. She already understands what needs to be done, and she's already a trusted member of the leadership team. So she and I have talked about this. I've talked about it with a few other members of the leadership team. I don't think there would be any objections among the members of the leadership team. And I would say finally, and most importantly, Lori has told me she is not interested in being your permanent executive director. So she's not about to apply for the job. So I think, that's probably a good thing in a person that you want as your interim director, although sometimes it works out the other way. So anyway,
I'm sorry. So then in that case, my question would be, how do we make sure that Lori's not doing jobs, even for, she's not going to get twice the salary, right? So how do we make sure
you have that? I think she's already thought about that, and happily she has some very capable managers who work for her, who are, I think, would be prepared to. One of them is on the call tonight, who would be prepared to understand that there's going to be a time when Lori's attentions may be directed elsewhere. So I don't see that as a challenge. So I really think it's just a matter of you having a conversation with her and sort of just working out the details. And Billy, of course, can be a big help in that because he's our Director of Human Resources. I
have another question. What is the turnaround time if we put out another RFP?
Oh, if you put out, well, that's up to you. Personally, I think you offered firms way more time than you should have to respond to the first RFP. What's obvious to me is that I think that most of these companies, organizations, whatever you want to call them, I think most of them are expecting that you're going to interview them before you hire them. Most of their proposals are, as I think one of you pointed out, boilerplate. They submit. I have no idea how many hundreds of these they are submitting all of the time. They're just not necessarily going to spend a great deal of time writing a very individualized, tailored proposal just for our organization. They're expecting that they're going to give you an outline of what they do. And if you're interested, if you think that looks at all attractive to you, then you will call them and you will invite them to have a conversation with you. So if the only reason to put out an RFP is if you really think you're going to find other companies or firms out there that are going to be interested in doing the job. And if you do that, great, but don't I would say you don't need to give firms as long a period of time as you did the last time to submit a proposal.
Okay.
And particularly if we do some proactive, kind of spreading the word in circles and asking people who know people, I would
Sure.
think that would help the process.
Of the 7 that you received, 4 of them were responses to a direct recruitment, or I specifically sent the RFP to them and said, we have posted this, please submit your proposal if you're interested. John Keister, Bradbury Miller, Deiters Todd, HR Source. Oh, I'm sorry. No, there were 5. Also Carrington and Carrington, the firm that Sarah Glavin had mentioned. And then the other 2 were just appeared at the last minute. And I never heard of these firms, and I have no opinion about them because I know nothing about them.
I mean, I'm not terribly in favor of going out and doing that process again. I kind of feel like anyone who was interested, we already made their interest known. And I don't know that I want to drag out the process, hoping that we find something better or somebody more willing than the people who've already. I could be wrong. I'm also fatigued by this process, but I don't.
I'd say, Virginia, to your point, and I think putting out an additional RFP is not going to get us the end result. We're gonna feel like we started over, and we're gonna get a bunch of comparable responses that are also boilerplate. And if we don't, that's great, but we're still going to need to then interview, I think, based on this experience, some finalists. So I think if everyone on this call says no one that is remaining is remotely interesting or worth our conversation, that's a different, I think, note for us to think about. If no one likes anyone that is in the remaining list, that may drive us in that direction. But I think if we're considering, or we think, maybe one organization or 2 organizations are worth some of these more pointed questions, I think to Suzanne's point, if we have 1 or 2 or 3 team members who are really willing to spend some time with 2 or 3 of these organizations, we're going to get out of this process what we put into this. No one knows what the library team and the leadership team and the community want as much as the people on this call, right? So we can't, I don't think we're not gonna have a magical firm that comes in and can impart their grand wisdom about Oak Park and kind of what our community is looking for in this role. I think we're gonna have to drive this, and probably in a much more engaged way than some of us think we may have time or capacity for. But I think there are still some people on this list, to me, that are worth that additional consideration and don't require us to start over. But I could be alone in that. If everyone's looking at this list and says, nope, nobody on this list is still worth our time, then I think we go back to the drawing board. But I think if we feel like a couple of these firms we can take through some pointed questions and feel out, I'd rather do that, I think, than start over, in my opinion.
The big problem that we have with that is when you said we get out of it what we put into it. And I'm afraid at the beginning of the process, we didn't put enough into this to try and get the circle widened to meet where we need people to be, and that we didn't get the word out enough to people who do this work, where DEI is at the center and the main lens through which they do their work. And there are a lot of—
I disagree, just because Carrington and Carrington is the firm I recommended, and that's exactly what they do.
Right. And Carrington and Carrington they were one of mine. They were one of my finals because of that. But the rest of
I think at the end of the day, though, even if we go back to the drawing board, this isn't the candidate. This is the firm, right? So we're coaching and directing this organization to get us to a pool of candidates with specific guidance from us. And I don't think that that's not going to exist unless we have this incredible, unique firm that only has that skill set. I think several of these firms could probably get us there, but it's going to take that effort, and maybe you're saying, Suzanne, to your point, do you think you'd rather start over and maybe relinquish more control to a firm you feel like you trust more versus spend the time having to put in more effort with a firm that maybe we're not as excited about? Like, what's your...
My concern is that when we say not as excited about, that it could be a lot worse than we imagine. And that that if we're seeing red flags, that we should pay attention to that. And that we don't want to be trying to have someone who does not have the capacity to have the conversations and do this work, trying to do it, and potentially causing harm and along the way. Yeah, and I'm not, and it may be that if we have the conversations with, maybe Carrington and Carrington, if we bring that back up, I might, be feeling it a bit more. I'm concerned about the big red flags that we had with HR Source and with Bradbury Miller, who were the other two of the three where we got down to. And
was there anyone else? It was just those three, right? Nobody else kind of made that next.
Well, Carrington and Carrington, both Matt and I think had an R3.
Yeah.
Right, Matt?
Yeah,
I did.
And, that's someone that I would be interested in looking at more closely. I would need to look at it more closely.
Do
we want to consider that, Matt, to bringing them into some targeted conversation?
I was just going to suggest something along those lines. In 2 weeks is March 8th, on Tuesday, March 8th. What is everyone's availability for that? If we are all available for that, I am willing to reach out to them first thing in the morning to see if they can attend a meeting on that night specifically to answer questions from us about that, about their proposals for consideration for them and Carrington. And do we want to do Bradbury or HR as a follow-up? So we have two to compare to, and we're not just going off of, one versus an unknown.
I would like to hear from HR Source.
Okay.
Are we interested at all in following up the 6 referrals that I got from, so the agency?
I forwarded your email to everyone, Suzanne.
Okay. Okay. So you forwarded it with where it came from originally?
Yeah.
Okay. Because unfortunately, the person who that came from, they would be really wonderful, but they are out of capacity until they would have to, I think they said that starting May would be when that part of the firm would, so it's not working. So then I asked her if she had other and they've had recent situations where people were interested in them and that they didn't have the capacity, and these were firms that she had referred out to other organizations. And I just think there are organizations where and independent folks that are doing searches that are very much doing the work similar to what the library is doing now. And we didn't get them because we went kind of the traditional route, with the exception of Sarah's, getting Carrington and Carrington. I didn't put the time in then. I was kind of doing this. I'm the new kid on the block and, junior and appointed, and I should watch and follow everybody else. And that didn't work. Not the following everybody else, but just the process and how it unfolded really did not work. So I kind of dug into people that I know and did as much research as I could to kind of look for more resources so that we can do this the way that the library and the community deserves, and the potential candidates deserve. They deserve to be like interviewed by and spoken to by somebody who grasps the work that's being done here, and not a slew of red flags, like a parade and a circus all at once. And that's just as clearly as I can put it at the moment. If anybody wants to have a conversation with me, I'll have more of it.
Virginia has her hand up.
Do we have I'm sorry, I'm not sentencing well right now. Do we have the whatever that we sent to the firms that we previously reached out to? Like, is that sitting in a folder somewhere that we can gussy it up, slap 6 new email addresses on it, and at least gauge the interest of these groups ahead of this March 8th?
You mean the RFP itself?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever correspondence went along with it. I'm assuming we just didn't like chuck an RFP at them.
Yeah, the RFP is still in your shared folder along with all the proposals that you received. It's there and I only delivered that. I mean, it went on our website, of course, but otherwise I only delivered it electronically to the firms that I mentioned. I sent them an email, I attached it, I reminded them of what the deadline was and who they should submit the proposal to, and that was it.
Do you think it would be ridiculous to ask them if we would, if you were to send out the same email tomorrow morning to these 6 groups, would it be unreasonable for them to turn around the boilerplate that we know we're going to get in 5 business days?
Sure.
Well, it depends on their capacity. I think to Suzanne's point, right? If you're a one-man band and you're in the middle of 4 searches, probably not. But if you're a team, and you've got someone who does RFPs professionally for you, absolutely 5 days isn't a lot. I think it depends. I mean, I don't know the composition of the firms at all.
I'm assuming if they don't have capacity to respond to the RFP, they probably do not want to have capacity for the ask we're about to have. So my thought is, if you can respond to us with the basics in 5 days, that would give us enough time to decide whether or not we want you there on the 8th. And then from that pool, because I'm betting not all 6 of these are going to respond, but from that pool, we can decide which of these from this current group and whoever responds from here we would like to have on the 8th.
And just to be clear, in terms of capacity, it wasn't even a question. This was a fairly prominent firm that does a lot of work and has many teams global, and it's just that the market is very, very active right now. People are moving. They're moving, and people are getting a lot of offers, and there's just, there's a lot of searches and a lot of movement and a lot of creative movement. Another issue that came up that I want to make sure that I mention before I forget is the question of, are we open? Like, how open are we in terms of the idea of somebody working from somewhere else? Like, we talked about that we weren't going to have the residency requirement, right? David doesn't live in Oak Park. We're fine with that. But the environment has changed in the last 2 years. There's a lot of people who are working, remotely from other states. I don't know how that works in library, if that's an issue, if they have to be, within a particular state, but just something to, to consider as we move into the receiving people, resumes and people interested in the positions too. Just how do we want to meet this moment? And I don't have the answer, but I just wanted to bring that up.
I'd like to put a pin in that for a moment. To come back at kind of a base thing was 2 people have commented that the 8th is good for them. Is there anyone that is, like, before we start getting too far down into planning for the 8th, is meeting on the 8th a problem for anyone?
It's fine. It's fine for Ted.
Okay. I just want to, I don't want us to get too far down this this path and realize that like half the board can't meet on a night, to get into that planning.
So Matt,
Oh.
so for that meeting on the 8th, we would have presentations from the executive search committees that we choose to have in tonight's meeting. And also, would we be deciding on what to do about the interim director?
That could be on our agenda for that.
I would like to do that after.
Yeah, because
particularly after
that was going to
David's
be my
presentation. Yeah.
that was going to be my next thing, was if the 8th is fine, and unless there is an objection, I can, if everyone is good with this, I didn't hear anybody say, oh my God, not Lori, in this, that we are, that I can begin, yes, having a conversation with her regarding terms for that I can present on the 8th to initiate her as an interim director. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes. I am.
Okay, good. Wonderful. All right, so Carrington and Carrington, we will invite to the 8th. HR Source, we will invite to the 8th to present and ask,
Yes.
not to present, but to be available for questions. They can, of course, say they are not interested, but I will reach out to them. The next step for the other 6 is to send the RFP to them and send them out in the morning and say that we expect a response by close of business next Monday from them.
Are you giving them 5 business days?
Oh, Tuesday would be 5 business days. If we send it out tomorrow, wouldn't it? Or
Yeah, end of business Tuesday.
end of business Tuesday. And then anything we receive, we would need to turn around by Wednesday to determine, and I don't know how we would, outside of having a meeting, because we can't have a vote via email. Unless there is, I'm trying to think of a way that we can communicate those we wish to.
Can we do a nominating situation where we designate like 2 or 3 board members? I mean, is there a way to make that more efficient? Because I worry that if we have another interim meeting the Wednesday before the Tuesday to go through the 6.
Yeah, I think if
I know we don't really have a nominating committee right now, but
we can establish an ad hoc committee to review those
just to review
proposals
those responses.
and see if there's any we wish. And I think in the email that goes out, David, do you think it would be best if I sent that out in the morning?
I think so, Matt. Yeah.
Okay, I can send that out, and I will say in that email that part of this their response would also be the potential of being asked to participate in a meeting on the 8th.
I was about to ask you if you were going to warn them in the email that there'd be a very quick second step.
Yeah, because I don't think that would be. I feel like that's the least we could do is let them know that is also going to be on the table. Is that part? Is there a group of 3 folks who would be willing to meet virtually on that Wednesday to look at any of the responses we get by Tuesday and make a recommendation of who to invite?
I can't. I'm out of town
I'd
next
love
Wednesday.
to.
I'm in Seattle
I
for work.
saw Madhurima, Ted, and Virginia, and Suzanne. Okay, I'll figure that out. And I'll email the 3 of the 4 of you. I may just, I'll figure that out tonight. And
Matt,
we'll
Joe had a question there.
yeah, I will. Let me pull that up. I don't know that we should name them just so that it's out there. It is.
You have it in front of you, Matt, or do you want me to do it?
I do. I have it. Walker and Associates, Nia Robinson for the culture, Elsa Rios of Strategies for Social Change, Lena Tom of Meso Solutions, Grossman Solutions, and Sherry Edelson of DRI Consulting.
So I'd also say that if the one of the other people that I know who does searches for in the for-profit sector, but has done work in the nonprofit sector, would not go through their firm, but would be a consultant separate from the firm that they work for, possibly, as another option, and said, if the RFP opens, let them know. So I don't know what you want to do with that. If you want to get that or consider that, or how to approach that.
I say we can send it to them, and they have not given, they can respond. We can send it to them. So.
Okay, so I'll get you that information.
Okay, yep.
Okay. I just,
So.
was trying to make sure we had some options that were going to fit. And I don't know these 6, they came from Sequoia Partners, and who would be wonderful if they were not so busy creating wonderfulness everywhere. But they can't start till May, so that just won't fit.
All right. Okay, so I will get that. I'll work on that tonight so that can go out in the morning. We will reach out to the folks. I will set the I'll email the Virginia will be the chair of the review group, and
Okay.
then Virginia, are you okay with that, being the chair to set that time and method on what next Wednesday? And then I will let you know who the other 2 are tonight, and I'll copy David and Jody, so that it can be all the proper notice can be made with that. And then so my next, I'm just saying this out loud so I know my next steps will be communicating to the Carrington and Carrington and HR Solutions or HR Source about the meeting on the 8th, and then sending out the RFP to the additional candidates with a deadline of Tuesday, close of business, to be reviewed Wednesday, and possibly invited to the meeting on the 8th.
I have a
Colleen.
question.
Yes.
For the ad hoc committee, how many potential candidates are we potentially pushing forward? Like, if you guys love 5 of them, are we interviewing 5 additional firms on the 8th? I just think we need to talk about some parameters.
I think that's a good idea.
I
I
would
don't know
just,
that we'll get all of them anyway. This is just
This is all theoretical.
I mean, my thought
It's
was.
a very
we
good.
picked-
It's a very good.
I mean, we picked 2 out of 7 last time. I can't imagine we'd pick more than 2 out of 6 this go around. I don't think any of us are really wanting to interview 4. So they'll have to be exceedingly dazzling to get us to that point. I think we're probably gonna pick 1 out of this batch, and that's if all of them respond, which
The
again, I don't
shiniest
think
of
it's gonna happen.
boilerplates.
well, I mean, but that's an interesting And that's an interesting question though, right? Like, I mean, we're definitely asking HR source in Carrington and Carrington to come. What if we have like 3 more that we actually suspect, or the committee suspects we might like better than either of those 2? Do you know what I mean? Like there's just, it becomes a little thorny. I mean, I like the number 2. Virginia said it, sounds great. But I'm just saying that, you know, like, I think within reason, right? So that I'm happy it looked like Matt decided who's on the committee. I'm not sure. I haven't looked yet. So before I open that envelope, I'd like to say that, you know, like if we could just, I'm okay deferring that choice to the committee. Like if they decide that actually we think you might like these 3 even better than maybe one of the 2 that we're definitely getting to the table, then we do that.
I mean, I think if that's the collective thought of the ad hoc committee, then that's something that we haven't thought about, and we're going to have to look and see, like, okay, maybe the 8th isn't enough. Maybe we definitely do need to talk about getting an interim person in as quickly as possible, because just this part is going to take longer. I'm just like thinking from a numbers perspective. I'm like, I don't think we're going to get all of these people responding, especially given, you know, the last round we solicited to 5 out of the 7, and they had a much longer turnaround time. You know, I think we'll probably be lucky to get like 3. And if for some reason we just really love all 3 of those, then I will eat my hat and ask you all to like hang out with me until midnight on a Tuesday. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen, but I can promise you if it does, I won't be like, I'm going to hide.
I mean, I just flashing back to when we were like, nobody wants to step in on an appointed thing on the library board. Like I think David's exact words were, we'll be lucky if we get 8 people interested in this position. And then we had like 27.
3. I think he actually said 3.
Matt, the meeting on the 8th of March would be at 6:30.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And next Wednesday, the same?
I will leave that up to Virginia, who is the ad hoc committee chair, to make that determination. And coordinate with Ted and Suzanne to figure out the best time that works for the 3 of you. And just make sure you let
the 4 of us. Ted was there as well, I think.
Ted, Suzanne, and Virginia
Right.
will be the 3.
Okay, 3. Sorry.
That will coordinate when to meet, and then let this every step, because we'll have to post 48 hours notice for open meetings with an agenda.
And there have to be written minutes.
Yep. So that it can be in compliance. We don't want any problems there. And then so we will then act following that meeting with inviting any further candidates, candidate firms to the 8th. Okay. All right.
Matt, are you you're going to be talking to Lori as well, right?
Yes.
You got lots, Matt. Sorry.
It's the job is worth the money. Or wait, I don't get paid for this.
It's the glory.
Clearly. Okay. So I think that with that, we are concluding our open meeting portion of the evening. And we will.
Well, I'm sorry, Matt. You will have to come back into open session to adjourn the meeting. You can't adjourn closed session. So
yes.
All right. So
I was misspoke.
I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure it's clear. So You have a link to go into closed session that's separate from this one. Jody will keep this meeting live and active so that people who want to stay can stay. And then you can all just come back to this space when the closed session is over. If for some reason you don't have the link to the closed session, raise your hand right now, and then we can put it into the chat. Well, I will put it in the chat because I don't want, it's only for you, but I can send it to you again. But it's in your calendar invitation, so you should have the link. Okay.
So we're doing that now, right?
So leave this meeting. It'll stay open, and then
Oh, wait, no,
what?
oh, we needed to have a vote to go into closed session.
Well, Suzanne and I are all for it.
I mean, you don't really, Matt.
Okay,
You don't really. You can just like you can adjourn the meeting, you can call a closed session.
okay. I'm calling closed session.
Okay, see you there.
Hi, Jody.
No, no, don't do that. That's dangerous.
What's that, yawning?
Yes.
Right.
There.
We have the board is present and we have concluded our business. And so I declare us for David's last time adjourned.
No.
I feel like there should be like a virtual fist bump.
Oh, thank you all very much. It's been my pleasure. It's been my honor. I couldn't have asked for a better place or a better bunch of people to finish my library career. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we can't all be together in person.
When you want to go for drinks, we're here for that.
I would
Anytime.
absolutely.
Maybe I only
Yeah.
speak for
And I
myself,
won't
but I'm
have
down.
And we
No,
won't-
no, down.
I would be even more obstructive in future meetings if I
I've-
heard that there was drinks, from
Unfortunately,
which I was excluded.
unfortunately, if there are more than 3 of you present, we have to post an agenda.
We'll go in rotation. I'll be fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Get
you
me a
say
David-
agenda, I say drinks menu.
Oh my God, that's
fine.
exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, can they all just be?
David, what is next?
What is next for me?
Yes.
Warm weather, I hope, in your future.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit more traveling, a little bit more work with the Harwood Institute, and a fewer meetings.
There you go.
And I'm still like, wait, are you sure we can't convince him?
Yeah.
No.
In state government, we have what's called a 90-day. And when somebody tries to retire, we bring them back on a 90-day contract. And it's a way of like getting them just for a little bit longer. And I just
Oh my
feel
God.
like we need a 90-day.
I know, right?
Did you see David's yawn?
Unfortunately, IMRF would have a problem with that, I'm afraid.
If you want to talk about jobs in publishing at Amazon, I've got some vacancies. Love to have you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank
right.
you all.
All right, thank you
Good
so
night,
much,
all.
David.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Miss you.
Thanks all. Thank you, Judy.
You'll be very missed.